Yes, good morning or good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am a third-generation member of a family who have been involved in the demolition and recycling industry since 1917. I am a past president of the National Federation of Demolition Contractors of the United Kingdom, past president of the European Demolition Association, and I am proudly serving at the moment as a member of the board of directors of the National Demolition Association of the United States of America. I am an honorary fellow of the Institute of Demolition Engineers, and I am a member of the European Federation of Explosives Engineers, amongst other things. I was approached in late 2010 by a representative of the United Nations Office of Project Services to come on board and assist them with the preparation of a master plan for the demolition and recycling of materials arising from thousands of earthquake-damaged buildings in Port-au-Prince, Haiti. You can appreciate that this was a major disaster. There was over 250,000 people killed and 300,000 people estimated injured. Port-au-Prince has a population of around 1 million people of that time, so you can appreciate that more than half of the population was seriously affected, either dead or seriously injured. I first visited Port-au-Prince early in 2011, and it was still a scene of vast devastation. There were still bodies being recovered from rubble. It will always be in my memory the first impression that I had when I walked some of the streets of Port-au-Prince. The first thing that I was challenged to do was to recognize that this was not a one-man job, and I had to recruit to the assistance of certain individuals. Could I have the next slide, please? My team was made up of Mike Janssen. Mike was a Belgium fellow from Belgium, and he could speak French, obviously, and Terry Clairvaux, who was also French-speaking, and he was a Haitian. So I was the only one that had the difficulty of not knowing the language, but I was ably assisted by both of my team members. We had to set about assessing what the damage really was and how the means and method of each of these buildings had to be undertaken to make it successful and, most importantly, safe. Next slide, please. Could I have the next slide, please? Thank you. Yeah, there was much preparation and planning, and we all know how important planning is for any job, any size of job. Planning is the most important part at the beginning of any project, and we had to set about making plans of how we could employ as directed by the Haitian government, employ local people to do the demolition work. And this was very, very difficult for the simple reason that we had to not only do the plan for the means and method, but we had to think about training. Next slide, please. As you can see, we have a management team that was set up, and each job had a management team. The machine operators that were engaged, much of the equipment was donated. There was a Caterpillar agency on the island, but a lot of machinery was imported, excavators, mobile crushers, and so on and so forth for recycling. Job site demolition operatives. This was a real challenge because there was nobody who really had any experience, as I said, in the demolition industry. People were used to, basically walking around in either bare feet or just trainers, no safety regards whatsoever for personal protection. So we had to go through the whole situation of training individuals to make them aware of the danger of demolition before we did any demolition whatsoever. Next slide, please. The conditions that we were working in were very precarious. Buildings, as you can see in this particular slide, were leaning precariously. The building to the right-hand side, which is leaning up against the building with the blue painted terrace, the blue painted terrace building was still occupied with families. And we had a hard job to convince people that they really had to move out whilst the demolition was going ahead. Much of the demolition, as you can appreciate, was mechanical. We would not put individuals into buildings that were as precarious as this. And, we had a lot of time spent in trying to get the local people to understand just how dangerous it was. I think they felt that because they had survived the earthquake, that they could survive anything. But as we all know in the demolition industry, demolition is a dangerous industry if you're not approaching it properly and taking the proper steps in planning. Next slide, please. Here's a local shop that was still trading. The building is partially collapsed. What you see there, that white box, is a refrigerator, which I felt was assisting to maintain stability of that structure. Just absolutely incredible that people were still walking in and out of this structure to buy groceries. We did convince them eventually to leave, and the building was demolished by mechanical means. All I can say is that the people of Haiti were very brave people. Some may say they were stupid, but really they had a lot of resistance against personal hardship and so on and so forth. And I can only speak highly of them. Next slide, please. The major development that I felt that I assisted with was the demolition design management, DDM I called it. Now this was following the example of CDM, construction design management, which we're all very familiar with in the United Kingdom and I'm sure elsewhere in Europe. The DDM basically spells out what one has to do when approaching demolition. And this was a document that I produced, and we introduced it into our training and circulated it. And it was all translated into French, of course. Next slide, please. Can I have the next slide, please? Thank you. Yeah, this is just continuing on with the amount of paperwork that had to be generated to emphasize the importance of what we were about to tackle. It was one of the most major demolition disasters that you could ever think of approaching. Thousands and thousands of buildings, not necessarily high buildings, maybe 5 stories in maximum height, many of them only 2 stories and single stories. So in terms of demolition difficulty, it was not difficult. The demolition assessment form was produced, and as I was based in an office most of the time developing these plans and so on, I had the team go out and we would fill in these forms, and from these forms we would decide how best we could tackle the actual demolition. So there was an assessment form done for each building that required demolition. Next slide, please. Big problem during the actual work was control of the people, the local people. The people you see in the foreground with the helmets, they were official. They were from NGOs, and that's non-government organizations. Non-government organizations are basically non-profit organizations. And in the case of Haiti, the government encouraged prominent individuals in the various areas of Port-au-Prince to start up an NGO company. And the NGO company would receive funding from donations from the government and so on and so forth, and they would pay out the wages to the various people who are working in the industry. So the NGOs became a very important factor in the whole movement of this disaster. And we specifically concentrated our training on the principals, the people who were in charge of each of the NGO organizations. Big problem here is the people would gather and go about trying to recover rebar. reinforcement bar from the demolitions. And what we found we had to do, because the police, we really gave the police a hard time trying to help us get rid of these people, but it was an impossible task. They just came from everywhere. They picked up rebar to try and obviously get some money. They sold it for pennies, and that was what they had to do to try and make some money to buy food. So what we had to do was we demolished the building in a day or two, and then we would move off and allow the metal pickers to come onto the job site and pick the metal, and then we would return after they had taken what metal they could, and we would finish the job. Next slide, please. The training of the NGE operatives followed very much what I had been associated with, the National Demolition Training Group of the United Kingdom. And I followed a lot of what their guidelines in terms of the training of individuals. And again, it was thorough. It took at least 2 weeks for each person to go through the basic training. Next slide, please. At the end of the training, we would, and next slide, please. Thank you. And the next slide again. Thank you. And again. Thank you. At the end of the training, we would award a certificate of training to each individual, and only the people that would have this training certificate would be allowed to be employed on a demolition site. This took some time to provide that discipline throughout the task that we had. Fortunately, we didn't have any major accidents. We had minor accidents, of course. We had some minor incidents, but generally speaking, all of the demolition work that had to be done in Haiti was done safely, but only after the preparation of a proper plan. I was very satisfied that I assisted in being involved in Haiti, and I will never forget the experience. And I would hope I would never have to witness anything like that ever again. So thank you very much for listening. My time is up, and I appreciate you listening to me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. Please stay around for the Q&A session, and we will also talk a little bit about your view on how the industry can help on this. And now we're going to move to another part of the world. Bill Moore is also in the US, but he's going to tell us a little bit about the experience in the US. So Bill, it's over to you. If you would like to introduce yourself, please go ahead.
Good afternoon, or good morning if you're in the United States. I'm Bill Moore, and I'm past president of the National Demolition Association. I worked for Brandenburg, a large demolition contractor in Chicago, for 28 years. Then I retired in 2013, and I'm now working part-time for ERM, which stands for Environmental Resources Management. And it's a London-based consultancy firm with 5,500 employees in 40 countries. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. We have two government agencies in the United States, FEMA, which stands for Federal Emergency Management Agency, that was begun under President Jimmy Carter in 1979 and was designed to coordinate government resources in the event of a disaster that overwhelms local agencies, and Homeland Security was formed in 2013 after the World Trade Center attack, and was designed mainly to prevent terrorism and protect our borders. It now has over 240,000 employees. The Oklahoma City bombing in 1995, which killed 168 people and 19 children in a daycare center, was what originally got me interested in how the demolition industry could better help with emergency response. The incident happened on a Monday, and every morning for the next week, I would watch television while I was exercising in my home gym. On Saturday, after seeing almost no progress and the media saying that they probably wouldn't find any more survivors, I decided to work to get the NDA more involved. So normally, the local fire chief would be in charge of the entire site, but because it was a bombing, their first mission was to find out who did it in case other attacks were planned. There were a total of 16 government agencies involved, including members of the FBI, which is the Federal Bureau of Investigation, ATF, which is Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, the agency that controls explosives, and U.S. Customs, who at the time was in charge of border protection. Remember, we didn't find out until days later that it was actually Americans that did this. In total, there were over 12,000 people who volunteered to help here. As you can see here, there were people from many different government agencies all crawling over the site, taking the debris apart by hand. One nurse was killed during this when she was hit by a piece of hanging concrete. Because there were so many different agencies involved, there were constantly arguments about who was in charge. Now we're going to talk about the World Trade Center bombing. Most people either don't realize it or forgot, but the World Trade Center tower was bombed by terrorists in one of the underground parking garages in 1993 by a truck bomb with 3,300 pounds of explosives. Terrorists hoped the North Tower would fall into the South Tower and kill 25,000 people. Fortunately, only 6 people were killed. But after this accident, New York City realized the World Trade Center, the highest buildings in New York City, would probably always be a target in the future, and they took preventive measures. Here you can see that, as you can see by this chart, they made advanced arrangements with 4 large general contractors and an engineering firm, each of which had emergency contacts with local demo contractors. The footprint of the 2 towers was divided into 4 sections, with each general contractor responsible for an area. As a result of their great advanced planning, there were demo contractors working at the World Trade Center the very afternoon of 9/11. As you can see here, most of the buildings were no more than 40 feet or 13 meters high, meaning that the basements contained almost all of the 2 110-story buildings. Many people escaped before the towers fell, but a total of 2,977 people were killed. Next, please. And in this picture I took within a week after the 11th, you can see rescue workers still looking for survivors while excavators and cranes were working nearby. The buildings were actually on fire for 30 days after the collapses, which obviously made it hard on the equipment. All of the contractors eventually got paid by the government, but the government refused to pay for routine maintenance, repairs, parts, and premiums for overtime. At least one contractor lost $3 million on this, and another went bankrupt as a result of their efforts. So what did the National Demolition Association do? Well, we created a video and booklet showing the capabilities of demolition contractors and their equipment. We sent it out to 500 of the largest fire departments in the United States. We organized practice emergency rescue situations with first responders in several large cities. One session in the Chicago area I attended had 650 police and firefighters involved, along with 150 pieces of equipment and vehicles. I also presented at the National Association of Fire Chiefs Convention in New Orleans. We encouraged our members to register with our government's SAM program and also fill out an NDA-developed pre-qualification form and urged our members to share it with their local fire departments and emergency responders. That NDA pre-qual form includes the following information: background and experience, equipment available, insurance and hold harmless agreements, emergency contacts, time and material rates, a sample emergency contract and purchase order, proof of safety training, the ability to deliver equipment, and we're also in the process of having the DVD put into a digital format and our pre-qualification form, excuse me, and they will be available to the EDA shortly. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bill. Thank you for the interesting presentation, and also in the Q&A we will speak about your experience in any of these cases, and also the NDA view. Also, I just want to mention that the sample that you showed about New York has been copied by many cities around the world. So I think our next speaker will also talk a little bit about the implementation of disaster response program at local level. Stay around, Bill, and we'll see you a little bit later. And I kindly ask our next speaker, Mr. Adolfo Garcia, to turn on the camera. Welcome, Adolfo. Please, if you can introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, good morning to everybody. My name is Adolfo Garcia. I am the founder and the CEO of the dMol. It's a demolition company. Our headquarters are in Madrid, at Spain, but we also this company at Chile, dMol Chile, and we just started our operations in Colombia, dMol Colombia. I will be very quick in the presentation because it's a kind of long, so I will go quickly through some experiences we have in the emergency fire response about demolition in different situations. What a company can do to help in disaster management. For us and for everybody, the first thing is who is in charge of the emergency response, which will be the legal part of the contract or the procurement. We, all of us, all the people involved must do the situation assessments. Is there people wounded inside bodies to be recovered? Is there damages in the structure and in the surrounding buildings? Social issues, rehouses, private or assets, service affected, cordoning of the area, traffic detours, the scope of the demolition works. Then comes the proposal for the demolition method, the machinery, and the operators, the time to deploy this machinery, and the estimated date for the end of the demolition. A demolition company, what can do in this situation? We have all kind of specialized equipment, from light robots to high-reach demolition machines. We have all kind of attachments for these machines, very well-trained operators and technicians, and we are used to and we are trained for heights, hazardous wastes, and a different combination of methods and systems for the demolition. Our first experience outside the country was in Turkey because of the earthquake at Izmit in August in 1999. Is the part of Turkey that is in Asia. It's an earthquake with a magnitude of 7.4. More than 17,000 people were dead, and more than 44,000 were wounded. The structures of the building were very low quality. In this case, there was a Spanish aid for Turkey for the recovery of the normality. There were an international tender, and a Spanish company was awarded with the contract for the controlled blastings of the demolition of the higher buildings. Here you can see some of the structures that were demolished with explosives. It's kind of difficult to go to another country with another language. It was not easy in this case to get the license for the explosives. Even in this case, we were at the Ramadan dates. The debris removal were done by a Turkish company after the blastings of each one of the buildings. You can see here, after the blastings, here's the end of our job, and then the Turkish company will come over. Next international job that we have done is in Chile. Because of the earthquake and the later tsunami near Concepcion, is about 500 kilometers to the south of Santiago. It was in February 27th, 2010. It was an earthquake with a magnitude of 8.8. It was the strongest as Chile. Since the one in Valdivia, that was the largest recorded in the world. This earthquake was 31 times stronger than the one in IT. The IT was only 1 month before this one, and you can see some figures of the strength of this earthquake. 525 people were killed, and more than 500,000 people suffered damage in their homes. They estimated that there was a total of 2 million victims affected by the earthquake. To see how strong was it, the city of Concepcion moved 3 meters away. Even Santiago, that is 500 kilometers away, moved 28 centimeters, and even Buenos Aires is 1,300 kilometers away, also moved 4 centimeters. Here, the Chilean government organized this by the Ministry of Development, with the supervision of the City Council of Concepcion. Only the high-rise buildings were in this tender. There was an international tender for these buildings, for each one of them. In Spanish, consortium awarded the contract of this building I'm going to show you. It's a 18-floor called Liberty Tower. There was a problem with the traffic because the main street of Concepcion is just near this building, and there was another one just in the next block. So all the traffic will go through our street, because the streets before that, they are only for pedestrians. So this job should be done without cutting the traffic in the street. There was some preliminary stabilization of the building because the severe damage of the structures. The quality of the construction in Chile is much better than in Turkey. All buildings are supposed to stand and not to fall, even with an earthquake until magnitude 9. Only one of a high-rise building fell, and the other had some severe damage. Here you can see the stabilization of the broken walls of concrete. Here you can see the building into the city. This is a view from the other building that was damaged, and the floors fell down. We had also a problem with asbestos. This was the first time it was done an asbestos removal at Concepcion. We set up a scaffold for all the building, partial cutting of the structure to get the trucks inside the building, so we could not cut the traffic in this street. We had a container going from Spain with 3 robots and a lot of equipment, and we did the demolition floor by floor, from the top to down. We used mini dumpers to move all the debris through the elevator shaft. Here you can see we had the visit of 3 ministers, and everything was okay, 0 accidents until the end of the job. Here's another job, also because of the earthquake in Chile, is Condominio Presidentes in Hualpén, is near Concepcion. These buildings just fell to a side, was because of the sinking after the tsunami. The buildings were damaged, but it could be raised back to his original position, but the client, this one was a private tender, decided to do the demolition and the new construction of the buildings. In this case, we did the demolition with a high-rise building, with a high-rise demolition machine, and the after removal of the debris. This is also another job, a small job of the City Council of Paredones. Is like 200 kilometers away from the epicenter of the earthquake. This is a small city council was demolished with a midi excavator with a hydraulic grapple, and after the debris removal. In Spain, particularly in Madrid, there is a very well system. It was set up by the city council after the fire at the Arias warehouse at 1964. The city council has a contract with 3 companies. Now 3 companies have been 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then 4, and nowadays there are 3 companies. The firemen, the fire chief will be in handle until human life are under rescue, and thereafter the building control department will take over as the maximum responsible and the top man. The companies contracted, the companies that has this contract, if they require the demolition, they will go to a company like ours to ask for any kind of equipment. This works for the city of Madrid. The companies nowadays are Coarsa, Grupo Ortiz, and FCC, and we usually, dMol works for the 3 of them. I will show you some examples under this contract, and also that are not under this contract, just to show what's the paper of the demolition company in different situations. This is gas explosions in the Toledo street. This was at the beginning of this year. The people from the council, the control building department asked Grupo Ortiz to demolish the top 2 plants. So in this case, we supplied a robot hanged from a crane to do the debris removal, and everything was done with this machine until everything was clean. This was another gas explosion at the headquarters of Alcatel in Madrid also. This was for the company Cuarza. The city council top men decided to demolish part of the building. It was a combination of high-reach machinery with other machines helping with grapples and crushers, all kind of equipment. This is another case. This one was a fire. It's for the third company, FCC. That's the company is doing now the works at Stadium Bernabeu. It was a fire. This was done with also high-reach machines. There is another disaster, in this case a fire in Cobo Calleja. Says City Council of Madrid. No, this is from Fuenlabrada. In this case, we had some asbestos also in all the roofs, and we must do the asbestos removal as the same time as we are approaching with the machinery, and also using pulverizers, water, and all the equipment for the security of the people. This is another case. It's a building sinking at San Patricio School. Was last year, I guess. It was done also. There was a sinking in the part of the building, and we did the demolition with a robot, also with a crane, and these aerial platforms for the operator of the robot. This is this year also, 2021, from the snowstorm called Filomena. This is the basketball court from Estudiantes. It fell down. We use these machines with a shear to clean all up. This is another case. Is from a windstorm in Madrid, also for FCC. We supplied all the torchment for the cutting of the structure. Also, there was an aerial platform, 90 meters height, and a crane to cut it in pieces. Thank you all.